Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew 𝐾𝐚𝐯. Today on the podcast, we're in New Jersey with a running legend with amazing stories. Meteoric rise in the early 1960s, all the way from discovering cross country in high school to winning the very first Penn Relays high school mile to setting world records, All-American individual and team national championships, winning the Olympic trials in the 1500, and therein lies one of the most amazing, shocking, and disturbing stories of USA track and field history. We'll talk all about that, good times and bad, today with Dave Patrick. Welcome.
Thank you.
Dave, let's tell everybody your origin story with running. How did you get involved with competitive running?
Wow. I was messing around with some baseball and stuff when I was like a little leaguer. In fact, it has something to do probably with some of the injustices that do happen sometimes in sports. I was on the 12-year-old Little League team that was on the way to the Little League World Series. In the first rounds of it, we beat three teams twice. We were 6-0. And then we found out that we got disqualified because we were only supposed to play single elimination. And we gave each team two chances to beat us, and they didn't, and we got disqualified. I'll always remember that the amazing journalist in Baltimore who wrote for the News American, and the piece came out in the paper and it said, "The Little League team that won but lost."
And too many times.
And we were thrown off of that, which has something to do with later in my life about getting thrown off of something else. But that was an injustice then. So it started early to learn stuff. I decided I was going to go out for soccer because high school started in 10th grade back then. And we didn't have a football team because somebody had lost her life. And so they suspended football for a while. So I figured, hey, soccer was pretty good. We had a good team. I wanted to go out for soccer. And my brother, who had run at Kenwood, in fact, had won a state championship in high school. He was 7 years older than me. He went to Maryland on a part scholarship. And he said, "Dave, you got to go out for cross country." And I said, "Len, I don't know. I think I want to do it." He said, "Look, I'm telling you right now, you got to go out for cross country." So I love my brother and all. So I said, "Okay, I'll go out for cross country." So I had a pretty good coach. And first day he says, "Here's what I want you to do. I want you to run 4 miles every day. You can't stop. You got to run 4 miles every day for the 5 days that, we're training." I said, "Okay, great." So I did that. And then on Monday, I come back to school and he said, "What did you do over the weekend?" I said, "I really didn't do anything, Mr. Berryhill. My legs were so sore. Man, I was just resting up. I was so sore." And then he said to me, looked me in the eyes and said, "I hate to tell you this, but you need to go out for soccer." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because track is a 7-day-a-week program sport, not 5 days. So I always remember that. 7, not 5. And that's how I got into realizing that this was a sport that you had to give every day to and not take off. Because what he said was, why would you do 5 days and then take off 2 days and throw away the 5 days that you just worked hard on? So now you're like starting over again. You want to keep doing that? And I said, "No, I don't want to do that. I want to get better." And so that was the first statement. That was the first person who had an influence on me about track.
Let me ask you then, to put that geography, where was Kenwood High School?
Kenwood High School is in the eastern suburbs of Baltimore City. It's in the Essex Middle River area, known back then for Bethlehem Steel, General Motors, those really blue collar, which is what my dad was. At 44 years, he worked blue collar at Bethlehem Steel, which I have to attribute to that. I got a lot of my work ethic, I think, from my dad because he just worked. He always worked. And we lived in subsidized housing for a bit. And in fact, we were kicked out of those subsidized housing where the rent was $75 a month because my dad was working so many overtimes that they found his income now did not afford $75. So we got kicked out of the apartment. So I think I learned a lot from my dad. Although he didn't watch me run as much because he was always working, I saw what he did. He said, hey, he got 5 teeth pulled one morning and went and worked that afternoon because he said, you got to go to work. And I think that whether it's consciously or subconsciously, I think part of that as well became the work ethic standard that I live by.
What year was that you ran your first races?
My first race was sophomore year, September 1962.
What did you think you were going to do, and what was competition? You're now in an individual sport, not a soccer player.
Yeah, it was so nervous. I trained for that few weeks running a lot of distance, so forth, or relatively distance. My first race ever is going to be held at Kennwood High School, and it's going to be held in a tri-meet with one of the best runners in the county, who I think won the county championships or was right there the year before. And it was a tri-meet, and we had a lot of people on our cross-country team. We had a JV team, a JV-A team, a varsity B team, a varsity A team. And so I know that's the race is coming. I go down the locker room and I look and see JVB and my name's not there. Okay, I'm at JVA, my first race ever. JVA, I'm not there. Oh, geez. I looked at varsity B, my name's not there. I'm going, I'm not running. And so I looked in varsity A, my name's on varsity A. And honestly, I was like so nervous. Before the race, I kept going to the bathroom, and oh man, this is really going to be something else. And right before the race, my brother corners me and he said, Dave, you can beat these guys. He said, they're no better than you. You have to understand, they are no better than you. And in fact, they put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you. And that's a hackneyed expression now, but I never heard it before back then. So it makes sense to me. Yeah, they're not any better than me. I don't know. The gun goes off and I took the lead. And I led from start to the finish, won the first race ever. I ran in. The guy from Hereford was really close, but I didn't want to let him pass me. And so that's the first race I ever ran.
How long did it take for you to start strategizing or thinking about races in detail then in high school with your coach and your soon-to-be teammate and intra-squad rival?
Yeah, that's interesting because it's a growing process. It's not something you can pull a switch and all of a sudden you know everything about what you're going to do. I learned my lessons and so forth a little bit. I ran pretty my sophomore year, was in some kind of strategic races, did not win every race my sophomore year. Junior year, got better. I remember sophomore year, I was running the state championships in track as a sophomore. And I'm ready to win the state championships as a sophomore. And right at the finish, I let this guy pass me on the inside to beat me. Then I ran second in the half mile. So what was really upsetting to me is that I wasn't going to get a chance to run this guy who beat me until next year's state championship. So I had to wait that long to beat him at the University of Maryland. And I was fortunate enough that I beat him. He was a good runner. Buzz Lawyer went to Navy. I think he was IC4A champion. Really good runner, but my competitive I wanted to get even with this guy. So I beat him then and won the half in the mile, ran good times, I think 4:17. And then senior year, I repeated and I won the mile in the record 4:14 and the half in 1:54. But it was so funny. You really make me think about something. In the half mile, I was tired. It was 95 degrees that day. And I went out slow and I said, okay, I got to try to catch this guy who's like a huge lead from Montgomery Blair. So with 200 to go, I got up to his teammate and his teammate wouldn't let me pass him. So then I went into an all-out sprint and I caught his teammate at the tape only because he wouldn't let me pass him. So it was just like, wow, that competitive instinct takes over.
Yeah.
I had my issues. I fractured my foot my junior year running across country and had to get the doctor to give me a special release to run into state championships because I've had a bunch of injuries, too many injuries, as a matter of fact, all along, but I had to just keep working through them and keep running through them. I dislocated my hip my senior year indoors running on a mile relay leg. That was frustrating because it kept me out of the national championships in Madison Square Garden for the high school mile. You just learn a lot. I got a lot of good people who gave me tidbits of information. I went to assembly and saw Dr. Glenn Cunningham. His amazing story. And if you haven't ever read his story, The Kansas Flyer, it will inspire you. And that's what he did to me. He inspired me because of what he went through of almost losing his life. And his brother got killed because they lit the stove in the school, one room school building, and it blew up and it killed his brother and almost killed him. And he heard his mom saying to the doctor wanted to amputate both of his legs. And she said, I can't do anything about this. He just lost his brother. So make a long story short, he overcame it. He became one of the best runners in the world. He was very inspiring to me. I saw what he went through. I saw his one leg was shorter than the other. He still had all these burns all over his legs. It's those kind of meetings, it's those kind of situations that happen that you learn something from.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the gritty details of high school, of the rise to national level and your teammates and what kind of workouts were you doing. This is the beginning. This is the first half of the 1960s. So it's
Right.
cinder tracks. It's crappy cinder tracks until you get to the big meets and with 1-inch spikes. And what was your training mileage and who on your team could run with you?
Yeah, that's a good question. And first of all, we didn't have a track until my senior year. Okay. But my coach just drew up, he took the marker and he measured out a quarter mile here, then he measured about a half a mile here and whatever. And we would just run around baseball fields and so forth. And so we didn't know what a track was, right? I was very fortunate that the guy who was with me in high school, Charlie Messenger, was an extremely good runner. And I credit Charlie for my development, and he probably credits me for his development too, because we were always pushing each other. We always were doing the workouts. We were always just competing with each other. We're always just getting that little extra in, you know what I mean? We'd run on the weekends together. After I got my sophomore year, when I used to run the school some on the weekends and so forth, it was embarrassing. I was running through the development and a guy hollers to his wife. He says, hey, Lucy, come out and look at this guy. He's running up the street in his underwear.
Yeah.
Because we had those really short shorts. From then on, I was pretty cautious about it. So I wore baggy sweatpants every time from then on. I didn't want to get ridiculed again like that. But to bring back to your point, I had a really good high school coach who believed in strength and distance training. So I was really always more strength training and distance training. I never ran anything less than quarters in workouts. So we'd run a lot of ladders, quarter, half, 3/4 mile, 3/4, half, quarter. We run a lot of half miles. We really even run a lot of miles on the track. So we put in a lot of distance. We're probably running, I want to say like around 50 miles a week, probably back then. We would go on these 10-mile runs and we'd run to a high school that's 13 miles away, round trip, and do that on the roads. We'd run on the weekends a little bit further. But it was just a good coach, a great teammate, and we pushed each other every day. That was a helpful thing.
You and Charlie Messenger were the top two runners, certainly in the East, maybe in the country. How did college recruiting proceed?
Yeah, we were fortunate. I was fortunate that I made All-American junior and senior in high school from Scholastic magazine. And we were picked as the top two high school distance runners from the same school. Because Charlie won the nationals in high school indoors, the race that I didn't run because I was injured. He ran 9:10. He was a good runner. He was a great runner. And we would always be competing against each other. It was a competitive, friendly relationship that we had, you know what I mean? Because we were still always trying to beat each other, but we're also always encouraging each other. And it set the pathway to really build it. That's why I think I proved more in college per se, because I was not indoctrinated with speed early on in high school, which I think is not a good recipe. And I think a lot of kids may reach a point where they think they're good, they're doing pretty good, but they haven't built the foundation. They haven't built the strength foundation, the distance training, all that. They just can get a good time in, but it's temporary. So when I went to Villanova, I had all that strength training. So when I got introduced over time to a little bit more speed drills, because in order to really improve and be at your best, you have to throw speed training in where you're running hundreds and 200s and 300s to really bring your time down. Although we did still a lot of strength distance training at Villanova and a lot of long runs. Some of the guys would always go out for 20 miles. I never with 20 miles all the time. I remember this one time we're supposed to run to Paoli and back, which is 20 miles on the road, which I never wanted to do because it's red lights, it's cars, it's where you're going. And so I said, I'll do it with you guys. So I missed that. For some reason, we got mixed up and I didn't make that training run. And I was so upset and felt that those guys were getting an advantage on me that I went out to the track and I ran 80 laps that night at a pretty fast pace on that cinder track because I'm competitive. I don't want anybody to beat me. Just a friend of mine would always say, Dave, if you're not running this on Saturday or Sunday and you're on the couch, your competitor is running. The guy who's trying to beat you is running. And do you want that to happen? Of course you don't. You've got to put it in and you have to work smart too. There's so many different types of training programs, so many different types of coaches, so many things, and we're all individuals. So at times you have to do what's right for you too. For instance, Tom Donnelly was my roommate for two years. I think the best track coach in the world, in my opinion, because he didn't get scholarships at Harvard, and every year he would be in the championships. He would have runners breaking 4 minutes, right? So Tom was my roommate, and we would do some morning running, but I wouldn't run with him because he always ran too fast. And he also ran too long. He would go out for a 5 miler, right? I would go out. It really was 3.5 miles my route was 3.5 miles, and I walked a fair amount. But I got back around the same time as Tom did. So when I put my log in, I put down I did 5 miles too, because Tom put 5 miles because
that's the same time I did. Yeah.
Sometimes, it's not how far you ran, it's how far you think you ran.
Yeah, we might talk a little bit about some of those famous tracks you ran. I lived down there in Springfield in Clifton Heights, and I worked in Paoli in the 80s for just a couple of years. So yeah, it's some beautiful places. Let's go through a little bit of the story of your getting to Villanova, because you won the Penn Relays High School Mile, the initial one. Penn knew who you were. Jumbo obviously knew who you were because he's Penn Relays, and everybody else. But it was a winding or bumpy road, not just getting to Villanova, but staying at Villanova. Give us a quick run through of that.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point, and there's some funny story about that. But Jim Tupney was the one who was really recruiting us. He would always stay in touch, see how you're doing. He wanted us to get there. He wanted us, both Charlie and I, to come to Villanova so bad. And so we did a visit, and we visited some other schools. We visited Penn State. We did a workout for Penn State, and I was able to really keep up with their good runners and all. And they're like, wait a minute, who is this guy keeping up with the good runners? And Charlie was running with another group. And right afterwards, they gave me a full scholarship, and they gave Charlie a half scholarship. And Charlie said to me, Dave, they don't understand that we're going together. And if we don't both get a full scholarship, we're not going. And I said, Charlie, you're right. We're not going there. And so that went out. And then Tennessee had some interest. We're thinking about that. Villanova, my brother always said to me, he said, Dave, not to diminish half milers. He says, but half milers are a dime a dozen, and good milers are hard to find. And he said, you need to go to Villanova where they have good milers. You need to go where they have the best coach. And we decided together that we would go as a team wherever we went, that we would both go together. If we got full scholarships, we would go. So it worked out that they offered us a full scholarship, and we were fortunate that high school year we ran the distance medley. My coach had to lobby for us to get into the Championship of America distance medley, because who were heard from Kenwood High School? Nobody heard from Kenwood High School. So he got us in, and in half mile, our half miler gets spiked. He had a bunch of stitches. He ran 2:07, and we were way back. And then our quarter miler didn't do us any good, and we were still like 10th or 12th or whatever. And then Charlie ran a really great leg. He ran like 3:08, 3:10, and brought us up to like 5th. And then I took the baton and was able to catch the guy from Archbishop Malloy, Bob 𝐾𝐚𝐯, who Larry James used to always say he knew about that race. He says, Bob 𝐾𝐚𝐯 is God. Nobody beats Bob 𝐾𝐚𝐯. And so I pulled Bob 𝐾𝐚𝐯 in, caught him with 300 to go, decided, like I mentioned about Larry James, I decided to go past him. And then when I went past him, I heard him kind of give up. He went, I'm going, okay, I got to keep on going. Got to keep on going. So I ran like a 4:14 legs. We won that DMR and we set the record at that time. And the next day, Charlie and I ran 1-2 in the inaugural running of the high school mile. So we were making a statement. And then after that is when at Georgetown corralled us and said, hey, we want you to come to Georgetown. We'll give you a scholarship. We want you to come here. And we both said, I'm sorry, you're too late. We're signing at Villanova. And when we decided to go to Villanova, it was a big change for us because I was a good student. I wasn't a great student. I was in a public school that if you went to college, that was really an exception. Most people took a general course. So that was tough. And then going to Villanova.
There were girls there.
Going to Villanova, I'm going
Not
to
at Villanova.
Private school. I'm going to a Catholic school. I'm not Catholic. I'm Christian. I'm not Catholic. And it's all boys. I'm going from a co-ed school to now a Catholic school, a private school, all boys school. And it was so funny. And when we went through the first couple weeks, we had to wear a beanie, a bow tie, and we had to roll up our pants legs like 2 or 3 times. And we had to cite a fight song whenever an upperclassman pulled us aside and said, hey, sing this, sing that. You got to be kidding me. But I knew they had great indoor track and on. I knew they had a great track program. The problem is, I don't think I remember knowing that the indoor track was outside. So in January, February, and March, we had to train on that indoor track outside for 3 months in the cold, freezing, windy, and we got the opportunity to shovel the track when it snowed. So we have to shovel the track before we can work out on it.
Yeah, you mentioned Archbishop Malloy. That was Tommy Farrell's school.
Yeah.
And they actually had an outdoor track like the boards. I think it was the same thing, a 160.
Yeah.
They did for the last year of Joe Piazza's time there. Okay, so you're there and you got to go through the freshman hazing a little bit, but it got even bumpier. You almost left.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to leave. I was homesick. Hey, I really lived a protective life. The first time I ever spent the night over at someone's place was a senior, and that was at my friend Charlie Messner's house. That's the first time I ever spent a night other than being in my house. So my parents were keeping a really good leash. They didn't let me give me too much of a leash. And it was so funny that morning I said, hey, Charlie, I'm going to make breakfast and bacon and eggs because my mom makes it all the time for me. I'm going to make it for us. And so I put the eggs in first, not realizing that I needed grease or butter or whatever. And they all stuck to the pan. And I said, I guess I don't know how to do this.
What was it?
That morning.
I've talked to some of your teammates, but what was your take on the facilities there? Villanova is a world-class place, but you go in the locker room and what's it like?
The facilities we didn't probably know better because this is the first time we've been out of college. So we weren't really comparing facilities as they do probably today. But the facilities were austere, barely anything. Our lockers were right in the corridor where all the football players used to come down to get into their really nice, pristine lockers. And on their way down, they would just kick our shoes out of the way, push things out of the way, whatever it was, because we were just track guys. And certainly we got a jock, right? And people don't know what that is, but that was a painful thing with jock rash and all the things that you got because you didn't have those really nice shorts to run in. Got a pair of socks and we got a gray shirt to run in. And then we had the shoes, which were Melbournes we were running back then, Adidas Melbournes, with hardly any padding in them whatsoever. And our trainer, Jake Nevin, smart guy in a way, he would cut out in hard foam rubber something and we put it in our heels. He put it in the heels of my shoes for me. But he also put in there, he used to smoke cigars all the time. He'd also flick his ashes into my shoes.
God.
It was like his way. Hey, Dave, I like you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hey, Jake was here. Look, I got all these ashes in my shoes. So, yeah, we didn't,
You hang your dirty laundry on a pin and get it
Yeah.
washed. And
yeah, we didn't really have great facility, but we didn't need it because we built a really good reputation, or just a family with all the runners, and they were just so connected there. That the food was horrendous. How we ate and how we even survived is totally incredible, because we had to get to the mess hall or to the dining area by 6:15, or we didn't eat. We closed it up. And if we did get there, we got this piece of mystery meat and a couple little half pints of milk or whatever, and some green something. And that's it. You didn't get salads. You didn't get extras, juices. You didn't get anything. So we used to go up to the pie shop, Student Union pie shop, and we would use these pie shop tickets that we got. We got 35 pie shop tickets a week that were worth 15 cents. And then every night we'd go up there after dinner, or maybe we'd go back to the room for a little bit. Then we go to the pie shop, and we'd all get milkshakes and cheeseburgers. And so
dinner champions.
that was our nutrition. That was like, we were doing it.
Let me get the details of this. I think it's interesting. How close did you come to actually leaving Villanova when
No,
things?
I was homesick. My brother had gone to the University of Maryland. He didn't really want me to transfer, but I really wanted to get home. But what happened was Charlie mentioned it to his parents, and they said, absolutely not. We're not going to let you transfer, period. So I wanted to stay with Charlie. I wasn't going to go by myself to Maryland. I want to stay with Charlie. So it's a good thing his parents interceded and said, you're not leaving. So we had the tough orientation from going from where I was in high school to this elite, pretty private college that was so academically challenging.
Yeah.
It was tough. It was really tough.
And then it was sophomores are the varsity and freshmen were kept separate. So you're part of the team, but you couldn't race with them for that whole year.
Yeah, I know. And that was really sad in a way that I certainly could have competed on the varsity, but I wasn't given that opportunity. So we did run a lot of varsity cross country races at Belmont Plateau. I was fortunate. I won all those races. And then we went to the IC4A championships in Van Cortlandt, and Charlie and I were running together. And on the back part, I slipped and fell down the hill, and Charlie wants to stop, right? And I said, you got to go. Because in high school, in the state meet, he fell, and I stopped to try to help him. And he said, no, you got to go. So I finally got up. He won. I finished third. But that was really our freshman year indoor track. Fractured my foot between cross country and when track started. And I was really off at that time. Since freshmen weren't running much, I didn't really run. So I took off like 12 weeks. And then Jumbo says, hey, the national A's are in Madison Square Garden, and I want you to run in them. They'll be your first race because your foot's better. And so I said, yeah, because we wanted to go after the national freshman record. And I said, okay, I want to run. That's the only race I ran indoors my freshman year. We set the national freshman record.
2-mile relay?
Yeah, 2-mile relay. I remember we ran 7:39.2. I had a good split. I ran 154, and 154 without training for 10 or 11 weeks. So I was really happy with that, because I'm going, wow, I didn't really lose too much for not, because back then we didn't know what cross training was. So there was no such thing as swimming or doing a bike or doing all that to keep, you just didn't do anything, for 10 or 11 weeks.
That race in Van Cortlandt Park, you guys were in the freshman race. Is that one? And talk about who was there. Marty LaCory was there already. I think he set the course record at Van Cortlandt in the senior race. Was that day?
You mean my freshman year when he
Yes.
ran in high school? Yeah, he ran in, I think he ran in high school at Essex, and I think he set the Van Cortlandt record, I think,
Yeah, I
for
thought so. Yeah, I thought he set the high school record there. Might have, I don't know if that was that same day. All right,
Yeah.
so you come to the end. You've got a record, the U record, and what did you do for summer, and what were you thinking for cross country? You're a half miler, and cross country is going to be a lot farther with the NCAA Division
Oh
One.
yeah. Yeah. So that summer of my freshman year, it was a hard job. I worked at General Motors and I worked on the assembly line. And I helped bolt spring and axles on a car, one car a minute, 60 cars an hour. And I remember I got 17-minute break mid-morning. And in that 17-minute break, I fell asleep as fast as anyone could ever imagine. And honestly, then I worked again until lunch. I think the lunch was 45 minutes. I ate as quickly as I could and fell asleep for another like 30 minutes. And then after that, we had a mid-afternoon break, 17 minutes. I fell asleep then too. And then we got home. I was so tired, couldn't get in the living room. I remember falling down onto the rug, so exhausted, right? Getting something to eat. And then I had to go. Then I went up to Kenwood and I did a workout. But
did you have somebody to train with? Was Charlie around? Was anybody around?
Yeah, Charlie was still around. We would do some running together, but most of the time it was really just distance. We were just running 5, 6, 7, 8 miles, sometimes 10, sometimes 12, depending. Charlie would like to run a lot more distance than I would. He really was a distance guy. I'll never forget this story. After our freshman year, we're going to come into indoors, I guess it was. And Jumbo goes around the room. What'd you do during the holidays? What'd you do during the holidays? So everybody's saying, oh, coach, I was running 70 miles. I was doing this and that. And Charlie says, hey, coach, I did 78 miles. I did 80 some. I did a couple of interval workouts. But Dave, he only worked out 3 times. That's what he said.
My friend Charlie. Yeah.
Talk about a BF. I said, I was just like Jumbo's taking this all in. So I guess this is probably like the sophomore year. So Jumbo made sure that the first day back, everybody had to run a half-mile time trial on the boards. Your first day back, because he wanted to find out what was happening. Fortunately, I was still in pretty good shape. I ran 154, the fastest time ever run on those boards at that time. And I think Jumbo was saying, look, champ, he said, whatever you're doing, just keep doing it. Charlie said, I can't buy all that Charlie said. So a funny story, though, is Frank Murphy used to go home every Christmas as much as he could back to Ireland. He liked to drink a little bit. He liked to party a little bit. And that's an exaggeration or underestimate. So it's one time Frank comes back and we're running the half-mile time trial, right? He runs 2:07 for the half-mile time trial. He's tired. He's getting ready to take his shoes off, and Jumbo goes over to him and he says, "Hey, champ, you leave those shoes on because I'm going to cut that fat off of your ass a half an inch at a time." So he had to run 10 3-lappers, right? He made him run 10 3-lappers, and Frank's exhausted. He's getting ready to take his shoes off. He said, "Not too fast, champ. 10 1-lappers." So he had now run 10 1-lappers. Needless to say, Frank didn't make it to dinner that night because he was so exhausted. But what that sent was a message to the whole team. Okay, this is business. This is Villanova. This is Villanova track team. And if you want to be your best, don't ever let that happen. Don't ever do that again. That was an amazing message that Jumbo sent because we were laughing. We were laughing like crazy when he's struggling going through all these 3-lappers. He's, oh my Jesus, I got to run another one. Oh my Jesus.
On the track by himself, on the boards.
Oh yeah, on the boards by himself.
Yeah. All right, so Jumbo has the famous, you can only do 2 out of 3 things you got to pick. What did you major in at Villanova?
Yeah, I majored in marketing, and you know the story about the 2 things, right? You can run, you can study, or you can date. And they're the 3 things. And Jumbo would come up to me and he said, hey, champ, he said, you can run here, you can study here, and you can date here. And I'm going to let you pick the 2 that you should be doing. And if you don't pick the right ones, I'm going to pick them for you. So I did some dating, but it really wasn't, I wasn't all out into it because I was really committed to running. I was really committed to being the best I could be. And that distraction of dating a lot or having a girlfriend and all that kind of stuff was really didn't fit with me. And although I did date some, but when things got a little more serious, I pulled away and said, this is more important to me. I got to do what I got to do.
What had Villanova accomplished at the national level? There were, of course, a couple of the early guys, but as a team and in cross country, by the time 65 rolls around, what did they accomplish? What did you guys think was possible?
Oh, in 65, that was my sophomore year. Really, we're running cross country nationals at that time. I'm a sophomore, and that's our first time running into nationals. And that was in Kansas, as a matter of fact. And Jumbo, we didn't have as good a team back then. We didn't have any depth. But so Jumbo just sent Charlie Messenger and me to the nationals in Kansas. Right. I'll never forget that race from the standpoint that Charlie is out. He's out in front of me by X amount. I'm not sure, but he was out there. And I'm in the back and I'm running, but cross country was good. I like to run. It wasn't my specialty. With a mile to go, Jim Tuppeny saw that I was dawdling around in the back a little bit. And he screams out to me, says, Patrick says, get your ass moving. And then I said, okay. And I ran a 4:39 last mile. I got 17th. Back then, they only gave you the top 15.
Oh, no, X+2. I didn't realize that was only 15. Wow, yeah.
Yeah, it was only top 15. It's top 40 now.
Yeah.
But it was only a top 15. Charlie ran 12th, but he really got some injustice done to him. He got disqualified because they said he and about 40 other athletes, I think Jack Batchelor and all was one, cut the course. They couldn't have cut much from the course. And the fact of the matter is, it's not his fault if they poorly marked the course. And so he got disqualified from being an All-American. And that still bothers me today that happened to him. So that's sophomore year. We got indoctrinated into the nationals in terms of what that meant and so forth. And then I guess after that, we won it my junior year and my senior year. You know?
At that point, I know in the early 70s, if you wanted to go to nationals, you just showed up. It wasn't a regional qualifying thing, was it?
No, it wasn't. It was just you got to the nationals and that's it. If you had a team and you can put a team in the nationals, then you sent them. And also you could individual guys too.
So you're a half miler and track season rolls around, and who were you looking at? I mean, everybody looks at Villanova, and of course we'll talk about the Oregon, the coastal rivalry, but who were you looking at individually when you looked at who you would be racing? Were you looking at the other people that you were going to hit by the end of the year?
Yeah, I was pretty naive from the standpoint of really trying to pick out some people who I really wanted to race against, or I thought that really would bring out the best in me. Certainly there were some. Von Ruden was a senior at that time. My sophomore year indoors, right after the cross country, running in the nationals. So I'm in the final, and with a lap and a half to go, I got the lead. And I don't really know what to do because I've never raced indoors before. And this is the national championships. I'd run a couple races, but not a national championship. I let Rick Urbina from Georgetown jump me with a lap and a half to go, and I couldn't catch him. I was like really trying to catch him. And I got so upset about that the next day in the 2-mile relay, I wanted to get him for sure. So I took the baton in fourth. Oklahoma State's leading, and they got the world record in the 2-mile relay. And that's Tom Von Ruden anchoring with the Perry brothers. And I can't remember who the other person was, Metcalf maybe. Amazing team. And so I got the baton in fourth and passed Urbina in third, and it passed, I think, Southern Cal, Lincoln second. And with a quarter to go, I'm closing in on Von Ruden. I'm like, oh man, I got to wheel him in. And making up that distance was a challenge. So I finally got to him and coming out the turn, and the race finished right at that end of that straightaway. And Tom ran me all the way into the right side of the track, right near where all the stands were. And we're running down and trying to get to the finish. I'm trying to catch him. He's trying to hold me off. I dove I really probably fell. I was so exhausted. I just fell at the finish line. We both at the same time, but he definitely did beat me by just a little bit. But I'll give you an example. So I ran a 1:47.8 split on that 2 mile relay, and the world record's 1:49.8. And so Tom even said to me afterwards, he said, "Man, I thought I was coasting home until you came up with me." He said, "How did you run that fast?" I said, "I don't know, because I was trying to catch you. That's all. You were in front. I'm trying to catch you." And so
Trying to catch the other guy, and then it was you.
yeah, I wanted to beat Urbina, but I said, "Hey, I got to keep going." So, I mean, that relay split probably stood, I don't know, it's still probably one of the fastest relay splits because that was for yards too. So
Yeah.
it would have been like a 1:47.
Let's jump around a lot, guys. It's fun. We'll get to some of the historic stuff and the protest of canceling Adam and Meat. That's just a great story. But let's talk about your run against that big, tall guy from Kansas.
Oh, against Jim Ryan?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was that. Yeah, that's a memory. It's a good memory, of course. And so I remember before the race, Jumbo came up to me, and whenever he wanted to make something he really wanted to make you remember something, he would stutter a lot more than what he normally stuttered. And I never forget, he puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, "Hey, champ, I want you to go to the lead and improve your position." Looking back, you're like saying, "Well, that's a dumb statement."
What does it mean?
Yeah, what? I guess he said, "I want you to go out fast." And so we made the finals, and I drew the lane, and I happened to draw lane 6, and it starts right at the turn. And I'm like, "How am I going to get in front of these guys? I want to go to the lead." So I honestly pretended I was like Irv Hall, our sprinter. And I said, "I'm going to get out the block, get out like Irv Hall will get out of the blocks and sprint past these guys and get to the lead." I said, "I can't change my strategy. I want to get to the lead no matter what, even if I am in the 6th lane here." So going off, I spurted out. I got to the lead, was really running fast. In fact, at the quarter, Jumbo pretty much told everybody that he didn't think I was going to finish because I went out in 52.1, which is 51.8 for meters, and they weren't running that much faster than that, even in a mile relay. And I have another quarter to go, right? So Jumbo's, "I don't know about this." I was strong and so forth. So I won and set that record, which was a good record because it stood as the American record for 18 years.
Yeah,
And
it was the American
national
indoor record.
Yeah, it was the world.
What happened to Ryan that day?
I don't know.
He wasn't even right behind you.
You know what? He was like, I don't know, almost a couple seconds behind. But I think he ran a good race. But I ran a race of a lifetime, per se.
Kind of out of your head, yeah.
And I guess it probably cements that when you think that record could stand that long, when everybody's trying to break it. And it stood as that record for, I don't know, 14 years on the same track, that a wooden track, 11 left. And then they moved it to an all-weather track and a 200-meter banked all-weather track. And it still took 3 more years before they could break that record. So I think Ryan ran a good race, except that I just ran a little bit better. I mean, that was
your day. Yeah. I want to talk about the numbers on your hat there and that kind of magical weekend, that magical Penn Relays with the first 5 Pete.
Yeah.
But just before that, I want to ask you what was going on in your psyche with, you're now the best guy in the country at one or more distances. You beat soundly, given the chance, Jim Ryan, who everybody looked to as, wow, he's the guy whose name comes up when you say mile, half mile in America. What was going on in your mind with what you were then?
Yeah, 68 was good, was tough in a way because indoors in 68, I fractured my foot, not knowing that it was fractured in January. And I couldn't really run as much. I could only work out like once or twice a week. And I had to run the opposite way on the track because I didn't know my foot was fractured. In fact, we had a doctor that we didn't call him a doctor. We called him Mr. because he didn't know how to treat people. He also messed up Maury LaCourte too. So he would pull me aside and take me in a room and make sure nobody was looking with Jumbo. And they would put this DMSO on my foot, which is dimethyl sulfur oxide.
Goes right through your skin into your system.
My God,
blood.
you can taste it in your mouth like instantaneously. In fact, my roommate, my sophomore year, got it on his thigh muscle, and he had halitosis for 6 months. Nobody could get close to him. Nobody could get close to him. And so it was a tough indoor season because I was getting injections on the weekend, cortisone, to race, and I was taping up my own foot to put some tape around it because it hurt. So I kept racing all those weeks until the third week of February. We went down to Louisville and set the world record in the 2-mile relay. And I ran a good leg on that. And then next day I came back that night, that Sunday, my foot was hurting me so bad that I checked myself into Bryn Mawr Hospital. The doctor took an x-ray. He comes out and he posts the x-ray up on the screen with the backlighting and everything. And I said, what is it? He said, your foot's fractured. He said, see the line right here? I said, yeah, I see the line. He said, see how fuzzy it is? I said, yeah. He says, that's because it's healing. He said, if you could run on that fracture for 11 weeks, you might as well keep running on it because it's almost healed now. And so that's right before April. So really, I didn't have really good training in that winter season. Although, to be honest with you, when that season first started in '68, I really thought I could break my world record in the half mile. I could also run the world record in the 1,000, the mile, and the 2-mile. I had all those down that I was going to set those 4 world records. Although I still was able to run through it and win the ICs and still win the nationals, I wasn't able to ever get near my best or anything better than my junior because I was hurt so much.
Yeah. You had the American 1,000 record.
Yeah, the story about that, I just had run under sub 4 minutes in the Garden. And Jumbo said, we're going to go to Cleveland to run a race in Cleveland. I think it was on Sunday. And I had a real back issue. My back was really hurting. I spent, 45 minutes in the hot tub. And it's the first time I ever asked Jumbo. I said, Jumbo, I really don't want to go. Do I have to go to that race? And he looked at me and said, you're going. So I didn't really want, because I wasn't feeling great. And so I went, and thankfully I did go because I did set the world record on that 12-lap track for the 1,000. So when April came and the Penn Relays, I was in okay shape, but I wasn't in great shape because I didn't have a good indoor season to train because I was running like 10 miles a week or 7 miles a week. And so when Penn Relays come in, I'm finally training some because my foot is letting me train. So I'm now actually doing some training. And we thought we had a chance at 5, but we weren't really sure. We just know we had good run. My God, back then in '68, we had 9 guys that could run 150 in half. We had 3 or 4 guys that could run 4 minutes, right? So we had a stable of runners that were great. And we have Larry James, the mighty burner, a great mile relay team. And we have Irv Hall, silver medalist in the Olympics. That's 100 team in hurdles. So Jumbo said, yeah, we're going to go out. In fact, to this day, and I talked to Irv and Larry before about it. He said, to this day, they think we would have won the 4x200 as well. That's Larry, because look, we had Irv ran 20.3 and Larry would run 20.6 or whatever. And we had 2 other guys, but make a long story short, so Jumbo puts me on the distance medley, the sprint medley, and the 2-mile. And I was fortunate enough that we won those 3 relays. And then in the sprint medley, one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me in running was back then, the sprint medley was a 400, 200, and 200. And I had to take the baton from Irv Hall running a 20.3. I'm like, how am I going to grab this baton? And I wanted to try to grab the baton towards the end of the zone because he's going to be going a lot faster than I'll ever be running. And so we worked it out. We did some practice, but we worked it out that I didn't drop the baton or didn't get it through the exchange. So that was a scary thing. And I owe those guys an apology. I've already told them, I said, look, Jumbo just wanted to win. Had I really run an all-out race, we would have set the world record in the sprint medley relay.
Jeez. Well, let's just jump around one thing. We'll come back to the DMR because it's gonna come up. You and batons, have a famous
Oh,
history.
gee. That was probably one of the hardest races I ever ran in my life. And it was against Urbina, who jumped me in the 800 at the NCs that beat me. And so now we're running against each other in the 2 mile relay when it was still cinders in Franklin Field. And it's pouring down rain and it's muddy and it's just and it's cool. And it's an awful time to run. And so the guys kept me close or whatever. And we got the baton. He and Urbina and I got the baton pretty close. And so I'm trailing him and he's got a high kick. And these cinders are like flying back into me. I mean, he was a light-skinned black. I probably was blacker than he was by the time that race was over, with all the cinders I had all over my body. I tried to get closer to him at the quarter, and his kick was so high it was going into my eyes. So I dropped back a little bit, and I think some of the people were saying, "No, he's not gonna be able to hold with Urbina." They didn't know that I'm just trying to keep the cinders out of my eyes. And so going down the straightaway at the backstretch, I'm moving up a little bit, going around the turn on his shoulder, not wanting to go by yet because I knew this was I have to pay it all. The guts are going to get spilled in this straightaway. And so we're going down the straightaway. He's still leading. And I make a mental calculation that I want to go all the way into the last lane as possible, away from the first lane, because I don't want him to see me trying to catch me, because you get sometimes that little extra burst because you know that you're about ready to get past. So I wanted to try to sneak by him without him knowing that I was on the outside like that. So with a yard to go or 2 yards to go, I finally got to him after trailing him for 878 yards and eating those cinders. And so I got him. He dove at the finish line. He fell into the cinders. And I finished, and as I think Georgetown claimed disqualification because the baton was not past the finish line. It was before the finish line. And Jumbo, in all his wisdom, when they were approached him about we're going to disqualify, he said, "You got to be crazy." He threw the baton behind him when he finished because that's how his arms was going. He threw it behind him. There was no video replay to show what was happening, so they didn't have a leg to stand on. And so we beat them. And that was in 66, right? And long story short, Rick Urbina is a district court judge in Washington. And we got in touch with him and he asked me to have lunch with him. So I'm there having lunch with him. We're talking about the races and so forth. And you kept me from a goal watch and a distance medley relay. You kept me from a goal watch and a 2 mile relay. And I just have one question for you. Did you drop the baton before the finish line? And I looked him straight in the eye and I said, "Rick, honestly, I did. I did drop it before the finish line because I was like so relieved and excited to know that I finally got past you that I dropped it probably a yard before I got to the finish line." He said, "I thought you did, but we couldn't prove it."
Yeah.
I said,
No
"It's
instant
history.
replay.
It's history now."
Yeah,
So,
let's go back to the relays there. You run the sprint medley.
won the distance
60.
medley on Friday, the
Yeah.
VMA on Friday, and then the sprint medley on Saturday. Larry ran the quarter, by the way, in that sprint medley. So that's what I'm saying. You know how fast those first 3 legs were. And I like loaf because Jumbo just said, "I don't want you to run all out. I just want you to win. I don't want you to win. I don't want you to run all out," because I still had to anchor the 2 mile relay. And so I anchored the 2 mile relay. I think after I anchored the 2 mile relay, I think we already had 4 because we won the 4x1 mile. We ran a really good time. Tom Downey was on that team. Frank Murphy was on that team. Ian Hamilton was on that team. And they ran a meet record in that 4x1 mile. And then our team won the 2 mile. So we had the 1 mile relay left. That was the only thing left to be able to win 5 championships, which had never been done before. And so you want me to tell you the story about the mile relay?
Yeah, let's see. You're wearing the hat that commemorates that. Pull that off and show what you've done with that hat, the number 5 on the side.
Oh, yeah. So I made some hats. Every year I was making hats for the guys. And so I made this one, but it just has a 5 on it.
Yeah.
Right. So to commemorate the 5 years, I made other ones. One that went on the other side here that had 43.9Y for the 43.9 split that Larry James ran, which is still I think, the second fastest split ever run at Franklin Field.
On that track.
Yeah, and that was like almost 60 years ago.
Yeah.
You know,
So what happened in the last race of the 5 that year?
Yeah, so the last race, the crowd was like sensing something special was going to happen because no team had ever won 5. We were down. That's what Villanova did. We always got in shape for the Penn Relays because that's our home. You know how the phrase is with Under Armour, protect this house. Jumbo believed in that. Jumbo believed in, hey, we have to protect this house. This is our house. And so it got to the mile relay, and Rice was sending up their world leading best team. They had the fastest time in the world. And they're coming up just a 1-run race, right? The mile relay. Now, Larry probably already run 5 races, right? And so we know it's the mile relay. And the crowd is, you can hear a pin drop because they're like, this is really going to be something special. And 𝐃𝐚𝐯𝐞 𝐏𝐚𝐬𝐿 is doing the announcing, who was like the preeminent announcer at the Penn Relays. There would never be another person like him. And so the race goes off. Our first guy, Hards Davis, hard-nosed guy, I think he gets a little bit of the lead on Rice. It's like a 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 thing. And then our second guy, he's hanging in there too, and it's kind of like a 1-2, 1-2. And then our third guy, a really hard-nosed guy from Brooklyn, Harry Nichter, he let the race guy on the first turn pass him on the inside. And that's a cardinal rule. You don't let anybody pass on the inside. But he did. And he ran a 45.7 split, by the way, that guy did. He said, what do you expect? I'm running 47 and this guy runs 45.7, you know, what the anchor guy would run, and builds this big lead. Because I think Rice probably knew they needed a lead to beat Larry James. So they have a 10-yard lead or so, 12 yards, and Larry gets the baton. And in the first 140 yards, he catches the guy from Rice, and he ran like 20.8 for his first 200, which if track times, you don't run a 20.8 in 1968 and expect to finish the race, because at Penn Relays, in that far turn, you hear the noise, you hear the woo, the crowd goes crazy. And then the person who's going out so fast, he catches rigor mortis, and he hardly makes it down the straightaway, right? So Larry gets up to this guy, Dale Bernauer, and he decides, I'm just going to go, because he told me this later. So I decided I'm going to go past him. I'm going to go past him. And Dale tries to fight back. He tries to fight back and keep that inside position. But Larry kept pulling away, and just ran like crazy down the straightaway. So we beat Rice by about 10 yards, and we spotted him like 10 yards, right? And so everybody knew that something special would happen, but they didn't know what Larry's time was. And I was in the stands with Murray LaCour, and we're looking at a stopwatch, and it goes, nah, I started this wrong. This number can't be right. And all of a sudden the PA system comes on, and 𝐃𝐚𝐯𝐿 𝐏𝐚𝐬𝐿 says, and Larry James split, and the winning Villanova mile relay was 43, and then bedlam. You could not hear anything. You couldn't hear what that number was. We just knew it was under 44. No one runs under 44. The world record, I think, was 44.9 in the quarter at that time. And so we won the race. It was an amazing thing. But the real story of it is afterwards, when Larry James goes up to Harry Nichter and he says, what in the hell were you thinking? Letting that guy from Rice pass you on the inside. Harry, what are you doing? And so Harry looks at Larry and says, Larry, that guy was going so fast. He could have gone between my legs. He could have gone over my back. It didn't make any difference which way he was going. He was going past me, period. And then he looks at Larry and he says, and by the way, you should be thanking me. And Larry says, what are you talking about? He says, if I didn't let that guy pass me on the inside, you wouldn't have ran 43.9. So you need to thank me for that. So what a great response. We all broke up, and it was like the funniest commentary.
I hope you enjoyed part 1. There's so much more to talk about with Dave Patrick, and we'll get into that. See you in the next episode. Hey, I hope you enjoyed another episode. Do you have someone you'd like to hear interviewed on the podcast? You can leave a comment on the YouTube channel or on the website, running70s.com. That's running70s.com. Let me know what you think of the episodes, and anyone, including yourself, you'd like to hear interviewed. I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.